Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we're here today to talk about the Doom closed beta that happened over the weekend. I had the opportunity to play it over on the PC. Before we really get into this, though, it's going to be a rather lengthy discussion. I did want to mention that the footage you guys are seeing isn't of the highest quality. Unfortunately, the Doom beta was running in OpenGL, which usually isn't an incredible issue. OBS and game capture, even DX Story doesn't really have an issue with OpenGL anymore, but it had an issue with the Doom beta, and no matter what game capture software I used, of which I own many, none of them would work. So what I had to resort to at the end of the day was using monitor capture through OBS, which meant I had to drop the CPU setting on OBS so I could capture without frame drops, which meant the overall quality suffered. So I apologize. But as you guys know, the game looks freaking gorgeous anyways. So let's move forward. As I said, guys, there's a lot to talk about. This is going to be a really lengthy discussion. In fact, I could not imagine doing this discussion in anything less than like 10 minutes. It's going to be way more than that, probably. There's just so much to talk about in the beta. So much to talk about when it comes to the idea of Doom having a multiplayer component in, you know, this rebirth of the franchise, essentially. So let's start with that. Let's actually start with the idea of Doom bringing multiplayer to the table alongside of its single-player experience. Now, I have to say, for me, I'm not someone who's looking to Doom or expected Doom to deliver a multiplayer component that I would actually sit down and play on a regular basis. You know, they didn't seem to have any real passion behind, you know, making a competitive game, you know, really focusing on the competitive community. There was no sign of that moving up to the launch of the beta, and there is still no sign of that moving up to the launch of the full game. So I wasn't expecting them to come out being like, yeah, we're supporting esports, we want to get competitive, you know, the competitive players on our side, we want to talk about what they want in the game. They're obviously not developing the game in that way. In this day and age, if you're looking to build a game, a community for your multiplayer like that, you bring on professional, you know, guys who are playing Quake, who are playing Halo, who are playing even Call of Duty. You bring them into your company and you say, listen, you know, we want your help in crafting a competitive component. You have a pro team that develops alongside of you. You know, they weren't looking to do anything like that. They're looking to bring back the franchise and include a little multiplayer component. That was the way I looked at it. There's no doubt there are mechanics that they showed off, particularly the demon spawning, which I really love the idea of. In fact, it's one of my favorite elements in the beta in both the Warpath and Team Deathmatch mode. But apart from that, you know, I never expected Doom's multiplayer to do anything insane. I just thought it was going to be fast, brutal, gory, and probably a little bit of fun. So going into it, those were my expectations. I, for one, am really looking forward to the single-player component of Doom, speed running it, so on and so forth. And I imagine a lot of people felt that way, but it doesn't mean at the end of the day that I didn't want the multiplayer to surprise me. I was very hopeful that it would do something special, that it would feel really satisfying, and that it would harken back to those old arena-style shooters while still managing to remain fresh and modern. So where do we start? I feel it's important we do talk about the visual and audio, the audio-visual presentation of the beta itself, because I think it's incredible. And considering the fact that we were actually locked out of the advanced settings options on the PC, the game still looked freaking gorgeous. It ran really great on my rig. You know, apart from the fact that I had to waste a lot of CPU usage recording with window capture, or with monitor capture, the game ran amazing. It was almost always at 60 FPS with the settings. I thought it looked beautiful. The lighting effects, the environments are killer. The texture work in this game is mental. I love what they're doing with the texture work on the weapons, on the environments. They were just freaking amazing, the amount of detail that is went into this game. Id Tech is truly shining here. From an audio perspective, there were things that I really loved and things that I really didn't care for. I don't think all of the weapon sounds are there just yet. I think the shotgun, the super shotgun, sounds absolutely amazing. Gibbing people, you know, body parts flying over the place. It sounds incredible. The game can sound really awesome at times. And of course, when you get those little heavy metal bits thrown in there, here and there, when, you know, like when a demon shows up or something like that, or in between rounds, it's really satisfying. The music, I think, is a big part of the overall representation of Doom as a franchise as a whole, and I wish that it was a bigger part of the game. There's not actually that much music going on in the multiplayer. Some people may say, well, it'd be distracting, but I do feel it's something you can implement without it being distracting to the player, and, you know, have it really add to the experience. To me, I had it in my head that I'd be wrecking my way through the multiplayer levels on a kill streak with the super shotgun, and you know, my vortex rifle, and they'd just be like, doo, 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 like really great heavy metal just riffs, man. Oh, dude, it makes me grin just thinking about it, because that's how they keep presenting the game, you know, in the trailers, and to me, that just brings Doom to life, that addition of music. Sadly, it's not that big of a component in the multiplayer. One of the things that is a huge part of the multiplayer is the announcer, which I've been hearing a lot of mixed things on, other people's opinions. A lot of people seem to dig it. A lot of people seem to hate it. There seems to be no one really in the middle. I'm on the side of the fence that's like, dude, this is amazing. Like, to me, it's a step away from what we remember from a lot of the arena shooters. It's a more modern approach. And not only that, people are saying, well, it doesn't fit, the dark, the gory element of Doom. But I think it does, but it does it in a different way. Instead of the whole sort of Quake, Unreal Tournament style, like, killing spree, rawr. It's this sort of AI voice that is so just relaxed sounding. There's sort of a creepiness to the lack of concern and emotion in his voice, to me, it provides an ambiance of its own, almost like some of those great AIs from some of the greatest, sci-fi horror films of our time. And I love that. The announcer voice to me was just so on point, man. I hope they do not change it. I think it's wonderful. And I think it'll grow on people. I think a lot of people were just expecting something more gruff and tough, but I think this is the way to go. It fits just so well into the gameplay experience, and I totally dig it. There's nothing more satisfying than hearing him do call-outs for your kill streaks and, for Avenger and things like that. It just works, man. It just really works for me. I was really impressed with it. Now, there's a lot of other bits and pieces of sound effects in the game that you'll notice if you're playing with a decent headset, and that was one of the things I really appreciated. The amount of detail that's gone into projectiles and explosive devices, just lots of little small things in the environment, all, really echoing throughout the space. And when you're in a proper firefight, whether it's in Warpath or Team Deathmatch, the audio really clicks. And then it clicks even more when you actually execute another player. You break their spine, you snap their neck. Like, it's just the right sound, and that splurt of blood, is nailed just right. And of course, if they didn't nail that, then they pretty much would have failed at Doom, because it's all about the blood and gore, and if the sound isn't there to represent the blood and the gore and the carnage, then, how can you call it Doom? So fortunately, I think they've absolutely killed it in that respect. But now we need to move forward and talk about a bigger component of Doom's multiplayer, which of course is everything that involves the gameplay design. The weapons, the environments, the maps, the game modes, the rules, everything. How the game, is played. There's just so much to talk about in this respect. It's going to be a really deep dive, so, grab your biggest bowl of blood and gut covered popcorn, sit on down, and go for a ride with me. So the first thing that I do want to talk about on the more positive side of things is that in the, 5 or 6 hours that I played the beta, both in Warpath as well as in Team Deathmatch, I really appreciated the map and level design. I thought the environments were really well done. I thought that there was a good amount of variety even in the beta. We have the more industrial areas. We had a few more demon, hell-inspired areas in caves and things of that nature. Blood spilling all over the place. But it wasn't too much. It wasn't to the point where it felt like the whole place was just made of blood. It felt like, we have this cave, we have this environment, and there's just blood dripping all over the environment. Lots of the locations where you were in more of a hell setting, they were destroyed, there were shortcuts, and that's one of the big elements that lends itself to the really great map design, in my opinion, was that there's lots of those hidden passageways and routes, and to me, that just kind of harkens back to some of the best, old school arena shooters. It's not just about like a 3-lane environment. You've got the weird ledges and the weird crawl spaces you can make your way through. Lots of different ways to navigate the environment to get the jump on the enemy. And that, to me, helps, it just helps drive the flow of the map. It makes it a little bit more chaotic. Now, one of the things that a lot of people were pointing out is that the Team Deathmatch mode in particular, which of course is not really a direct objective mode, which means there's no real location on the map where players are constantly fighting, unlike Warpath, which has, King of the Hill moving around the map. The only thing that really draws player together in Team Deathmatch are the demon spawns. And occasionally, people maybe picking up a super weapon. The BFG is eventually going to be on the map. We have the crazy, arc cannon right now. And considering the fact that it was only 6-on-6, some of the matches were really slow. They were genuinely slow. No one knew where they were. Now, I lend a part of this to the fact that it was just a 1 week in beta. Most of the people playing were playing the game for the very first time. In order for a multiplayer experience to truly be judged, in my opinion, in terms of the number of the players on the map and the map flow and the overall map design and the game mode design, you need to have a group of players who know the maps. Once you understand the map, you start to get a feel for where the pickups are, armor pickups, health pickups, the super pickups like the quad damage and the speed boost, of course the demon runes. Once you understand those elements, generally combat happens more often. There's more navigation from each of the individual players across the map. But when you don't know where you're going and we don't know what you're doing, you're kind of just going and making the motions. You're something in the corner catches your eye. Maybe you see a teammate. Okay, I'm going to go the opposite direction. There's not a lot of logic to your movement across the game world. But once you understand a map, you're going to start to develop your own routes. You're going to start to understand where to flank people. And the same is going to be said for the other players. And I think it's going to completely change things. So I'm not ready to jump on on id's back here, Bethesda's back, and say that 6v6 isn't enough for team deathmatch. I know a lot of people were looking for 8v8 and even bigger, but I think that that's something that I want to wait to make a call on until I play the full game. It wasn't always like that either. There were a lot of game modes, a lot of matches that I have, even in team deathmatch, where things were going very quickly, but there were also probably an equal amount of matches where things felt like they were a bit of a chug. Now, Warpath, of course, completely different game mode. There's a constant objective to fight after. That was never an issue there. And what I liked about the demon spawn was that, okay, in Team Deathmatch, it's something for your team to fight over. But in Warpath, it could be a game-changing grab. Like, obtaining the demon spawn and getting the Revenant, in the case of the beta, was a huge way to acquire a zone for an extended period of time to genuinely wreak havoc on your team. So not only did your team have to focus on the acquisition of the warpath of the hill, that's moving on the warpath, they had to really pay close attention to elements like the Revenant spawn, like the super weapon spawns, things of that nature, to make sure that they had the advantage, and that the tide of the battle couldn't be turned, because there was some seriously close warpath matches that I had due to that mechanic being in place. So that's pretty much what I have to say about the game modes. I enjoyed Warpath more than anything. I love the idea of moving King of the Hill, and like I said, I really appreciate the idea of the demon spawns. They were a great way to pull players away from constantly fighting over one point. One of my issues with King of the Hill traditionally is that it actually turns into too much of a frag fest right on that point. There's not a lot of reasons for the players to go anywhere else on the map. So now you're splitting it up. And when you're working with 6v6, you're giving players a reason to communicate, to coordinate, to focus on who's covering what and when, where. And overall, you just add an extra layer of communication and skill that has to go into your team winning. And I genuinely appreciate that. So I really enjoyed Warpath for that reason. The next big thing I think we really need to talk about are the weapons in the game and the choices that the team made in terms of how players will actually equip weapons to take out into the battlefield. And we also have to talk a little bit about the essentially what are these booster cards that you get at the start of a match. But let's start with the weapons. The thing is, they decided to take a more modern approach and allow players to have loadouts. So when you first start up the game, you're like level 1, you have 3 default loadouts that have a sampling of weapons and equipment. So you might have a Vortex rifle, which is like a charge-up sniper rifle, and then the super shotgun, which is close quarters, double-barrel shotgun, does a lot of damage, but you have to be very close to the other player. And then you have the teleportation disc. But as you level up, you'll, very shortly, in the beta at least, you'll unlock all of the weapons available in the game. I think there was like 8 in total. So you got like a rocket launcher, the plasma rifle, you've got a static rifle, you've got the heavy machine gun, you've got the super shotgun, the Vortex rifle, and the electric rifle, the electric gun. Basically, the lightning gun is the only one I'm missing here. That happened fairly quickly for everyone in the beta. So almost immediately, everyone has the opportunity to make their own loadout. They can have a frag grenade, like a siphon grenade, or the teleportation disc, right? And then they can have a variety of these different weapons. The issue that occurs when you put all of the weapons into a player's loadout is that you have to meticulously balance those weapons to make sure that players aren't constantly just using 1 or 2 weapons. And what happened in the beta was that people were quickly discovering how effective the super shotgun and the Vortex rifle were. The Vortex rifle being that charge-up sniper rifle, and of course the super shotgun being the double-barrel sawed-off. I like the double-barreled sawed-off. It makes sense to me, and I can imagine that everyone would just always equip it as a secondary weapon. I would be okay with that. I, for one, am one of those people who thinks when you're building a game like Doom, I'd rather have a smaller selection of weapons, you know, maybe be forced to run the super shotgun as a secondary and focus on the whole game just being more skill-based and have less weapons, you know, for the player to choose from, at least from a spawning standpoint. So everybody was just using the Vortex Rifle and the Super Shotgun pretty much towards the end of the beta. Everyone understood how effective those two weapons are. Obviously, Super Shotgun, close quarters, is going to annihilate, as it should be, and I'm okay with that. But the Vortex Rifle in a game like this where, especially playing on PC, people can, you know, turn around in a circle, there's no negative to hip firing this insanely powerful sniper rifle, you know, people were just going to town with it, and they were realizing it's even more effective than the rocket launcher. Why would I use that when I can, you know, pair a Vortex Rifle, which can give me long-range capabilities, which I can charge up and almost instantly kill players, and then a Super Shotgun? Why would I choose anything else, considering the fact they're not going to be nearly as effective? And that was the case with all of the other weapons, the Plasma Rifle, the Lightning Gun, the Static Rifle, which I really wanted to like. The idea with the Static Rifle is that you have to walk around with it equipped in order to charge up the rifle's power, and then you can get a more charged shot. But everything was just so weak at the end of the day. Nothing could compare to the efficiency and the rapid delivery system of the damage of the Vortex Rifle and the you know, the Super Shotgun, the sawed-off shotgun. So that's a huge issue they've created for themselves. They have to genuinely balance that. Now, if they had gone with a more traditional loadout style where the player simply spawns with nothing but the Super Shotgun and all of these weapons become power weapons, then, you know, they could have, it would have been okay to have one weapon be, you know, very powerful, because you're only going to have a limited selection of super weapons on the map. Instead, what they've done is they're going to have the BFG and, like, the crazy arc rifle, which is this giant, like, hip fire arc rifle that one-shots people. Those are the power weapons. Those are what players fight over. So there's a huge amount they have to balance. They have to balance power weapons on the map. They have to balance the loadout weapons. They've added additional work for themselves. That's simply how multiplayer shooters work. I don't have to be a game developer to tell you that. I'm somebody who's been playing first-person shooters, you know, since I was 12 years old. Like, I can tell you that that is a complex issue that they're going to now have to cope with. So it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with that. I imagine they'll be listening to the community, listening to the players. But at the end of the day, you know, it's really about that community as well. And I think we need to talk a little bit about this. There are these nodes, essentially, that you can activate. You get them just randomly after leveling up. They'll give you the ability to do very simple things. They're nothing game-breaking. You might get additional experience. You might have an armor boost at the start of the match. But most of the important ones evolved around giving you actual countdown timers for the different spawns on the map. So you might be able to see item spawns, you know, things like the Revenant or the super weapon spawns. Obviously, that's a huge tactical advantage. And obviously, that is something that you don't want in a highly competitive session of a game like this. You know, there's a reason that games like League of Legends and Halo, you know, have implemented spawn timers for the power weapons and the power elements in their games. League of Legends has actual timers now for, you know, the different monsters that spawn in the jungle and on the map. Halo has actual spawn timers for all of the weapons on the map. You know, they're trying to eliminate the guesswork and make sure that there's as much direct skill put into the game as possible in a competitive scenario. Doom isn't doing that. You know, you actually have nodes that you have to equip in order to make that work, you know, rather than it just being a constant thing where there's always a timer. If there was always a timer on the Revenant and on the weapons, you know, then there's always that consciousness. There's always that element that your team has to concern themselves with. Okay, guys, we got 40 seconds till Revenant's up. Everybody get ready. We're going to push to the south of the map. Like, that to me is a huge thing. It's a massive addition to competitive play. It's a boost. It's an overall improvement to the competitive nature of a multiplayer experience. They don't have that. You know, they're using these little nodes instead. I just don't know how I feel about them. I feel like they were very torn in trying to bring a modern, you know, they're trying to bring a classic arena-style shooter, in a sense, you know, to a modern age. So they felt like they had to consider elements, you know, what would people like, you know, what is a modern thing. I just feel like they didn't really have a complete direction for it. The multiplayer doesn't feel like this really great, well thought out component right now. It feels like the multiplayer for the sake of the multiplayer to me. There's nothing exceptionally special here. I think the biggest thing it has going for it is that, you know, at its core, the shooting aspect of the game, it does feel skill-based. You know, it feels skill-based. You are rewarded for precision and timing. You're rewarded for even things like the Super Shotgun, which you would think are just spam happy. They're not, because if you miss a shot, if you don't land a kill shot with the Super Shotgun, then you have to reload both shells. So, you know, there's a lot of timing and consideration that goes into player engagement distances. And as an individual, if you master those concepts, you understand how much damage you deal when you melee, how much damage your shotgun deals at certain ranges, you know, how much damage you can do with a vortex rifle while hip firing or landing a critical hit. You know, those elements exist. I think at its core, there's a good shooter there. I just don't know that if they've taken it in the right direction with a lot of the game's systems. You know, number one, the weapon loadout system. Number two, those node systems. You know, they don't affect the game that much, but then it begs the question, why have them exist in that fashion at all? So yeah, the Doom beta. Like I said, I told you guys I had a lot to say about it. You know, they have some time. There's a lot of room to improve. There's still a lot of other small things, honestly, that I found frustrating. It just didn't feel finished, you know? I know it's beta, but we're talking beta when the game is about a month away, a little over a month to launch now. So I was expecting a slightly more polished product, especially considering the alpha they put on. And there were some odd things in the beta, after talking to some people who played in the alpha. Like, there was no FOV slider. I don't understand why they restricted so many of the graphics settings, considering it's beta. You know, at this point, I think that's something that players should really have access to. You know, I understand maybe considering the idea that you're testing servers and things of that nature, but then I'm more concerned because I'm like, they think the game's ready, and I'm like, it's not. You know, it needs work. I think they genuinely could have benefited from bringing on, you know, consultants, people who've been playing in the competitive FPS industry, and you really looked at the game and said, you know what, this just isn't, this isn't really going to work out. And I'm sorry for anybody who, you know, may say to themselves, but I just want a multiplayer experience. I don't need it to be ultra competitive. But you know what? That's the whole point of a multiplayer experience like this, is the competitive nature, and increasing the overall competitive drive of the game, making sure that it has a bigger focus on competitive play, improves the overall quality of the experience. You know, and if you're someone who can't take the heat, who, you know, then, I mean, sorry, but that's the whole point of multiplayer experiences. That's just the way they should be. There's a few other small issues that I think they can definitely iron out before the beta, and I did really want to talk and address about those. Number one was some really big issues with how damage is communicated to the player. Some weapons, very in your face, it's really easy to tell, okay, I'm taking damage. One of the biggest issues, though, are melee attacks. Being meleeed from any direction, apart from directly in front of you, there's very little feedback provided to the player. You know, I'll be in a combat situation, there's explosions going on everywhere, I've got blood and chunks in my face, I'm shooting a plasma rifle that's emitting these crazy, amazing energy pulses. I really did appreciate all that was done with the plasma rifle, I just wished it was more powerful. It's very little feedback to tell me, hey, this guy's meleeing you in the back of the head, and he's gonna melee you 3 times, and then he's gonna snap you in half with an execution. They really needed to work on that, and that situation occurred with some of the other weapons in the game. There just wasn't a lot of feedback being provided to the player. You know, and especially on PC, that's something that has to really be portrayed. You know, you have to work on screen shake and things of that nature, because you don't have like a controller where you can just have things vibrate. You know, PC gamers are using mouse and keyboard. So you have to really make sure that is being portrayed to the player so they can then cope with that situation. There's nothing worse than dying and not realizing that someone actually was meleeing you from behind. You shouldn't have to work that hard at recognizing that you're being attacked by someone else. So that's a bit frustrating. But like I said, that's something I think they can easily iron out. There were a lot of things that I really liked that they did in the beta, but they didn't really ever involve the actual gameplay. You know, it feels great to give someone, no doubt about that, but outside of that, the things that I really appreciated were the character customization, the ability to customize your Space Marine. There's a huge customization system. You've got different finish types, different paint types like matte and chrome that you can put on your armor. You can make the armor look like it's worn. You can have it have battle scratches and dirt on it, and the same can be done with your weapons. All the systems that can be used for customizing your Space Marine's armor can be used for customizing your weapons. And I love stuff like that, because to me, it's a great way to sort of tell a story. You know, I can have my vortex rifle that's a little bit gouged. It's got this awesome chrome plating on it with this blue, you know, this blue design, like camoed all on it and stuff. But it's got some scratches, you know, it's a little bit dinged up, it's a little bit dirty. I've been through some war, I've been through some battles. I like that. I thought that was a great little addition to the game. And it's a great way to reward players for playing the game and leveling up. You know, it's just random goodies, essentially. That way, people don't get too caught up in, you know, just leveling. You know, the core of a good multiplayer shooter should be playing the game itself, mastering its techniques and its challenges, and coping with all of the things that you have to cope with as an individual, learning a game, or, you know, just playing the game, you know, in a competitive format, perhaps with a team that knows exactly what they're doing. You should never feel like you're playing for the sake of unlock. So I'm happy they kept that purely cosmetic. I think that was just really well done. At this point, I'm sure there are things I forgot to talk about. There was so many things I was trying to remember and put into my head for this. Like, you know, okay, there's all these things I really need to focus on. There's so much to talk about with this beta. I mean, at the end of the day, did I have fun with the Doom beta? Yeah, I know I enjoyed my time with it. There were some moments where I was really into it, but I think a lot of that just came down to the fact it's a competitive first-person shooter. And I'm sorry, but when I'm playing any competitive first-person shooter, I feel a little bit tense, you know, because I just want to win. I want to perform really well. I'm competitive when it comes to games like this. I like to be at the top of the leaderboards. I like to be doing, you know, as good as I can. And considering the fact, I'll let you guys in a little secret, that I played the entire beta with an Xbox One controller. I know, blasphemy, right? But I did relatively well, actually. I did very well, actually, considering I was playing with a bunch of mouse and keyboard users. You know, I didn't have the turning speed, but you didn't really need it in this game. I was able to get myself a proper setup and then, you know, fall back to my trusty super shotgun. So that's it, guys. You know, I like the gore. I like the fact that it's Doom. I thought, you know, the environments and the world design, the map layouts were phenomenal. You know, I think there's a lot of great potential there. I loved what they did with the Revenant and the demon spawns, as I said. I know we're going to have even more demons when the full game comes out. And I can see myself, considering the fact I'm going to be picking Doom up for the single player, playing Warpath probably every now and then. You know, I definitely have a group of friends who are going to be picking the game up, and there's no doubt that we'll throw in a few matches of Warpath here and there, and I'm sure we'll have fun. There will be blood will be spilled, you know, and it'll be enjoyable. But I think the real, you know, answer as to whether or not Doom's multiplayer is going to be able to go anywhere is up to the community at this point. It's all about how the community supports it after launch and how the developer then listens and supports the community to improve the experience. If they're willing to listen to players who are avidly playing the game's multiplayer, if they're willing to make the necessary changes to make sure that the game remains competitive and that it remains as heavily skill-based as possible, which is something I don't think it does right now, then the multiplayer could improve and it could become a, you know, a long-term portion of this new Doom experience. Best of luck to the guys at id. I really hope they can bring it together for launch, both for the multiplayer and, of course, the single player, which I'm most looking forward to. When the game does go live, you guys can definitely expect me to dive into the multiplayer and make sure that I bring you my impressions on it come launch day, let you know if it's something that I could see people playing into the future and whether it has a place in the competitive first-person shooter scene. If you got to play the beta this weekend, feel free to share any of your thoughts, any of your impressions or concerns with me right down in that comment section below. If there are any questions that I managed to not answer, which is very possible, throw them down in the comment section below as well. And I'll see you in the next one.